Good evening, all. Welcome. This is FMA discussion episode 150, and tonight is going to be more theme oriented. And tonight we are going to be focusing on pre-violence, the mindset and the preparation thereof. And tonight we have three guests, and starting with Guru Tom Pena from England. We have
Hello,
Guru
everyone.
Anton St.James from England, and we have Laurie, Pell Rider from Texas.
Yeah, the Pale Rider.
Right.
So I want to thank you guys for coming on. I appreciate it.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, pleasure.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this. I think there's going to be good information for those who are watching in this, and I'm looking forward. So for the folks that are watching, please tell us where you're watching from. Hit that like button, and we're going to get started. And how we're going to set this up, Laurie's raising the roof as I'm, and how we're going to do this is we're going to have 5 sections tonight, folks, and each person will start a section, and then we'll go around to the other guests, and they'll put their input as well. If you do have questions, put them on the sidelines, and I'll look over there and get them as we're going along and all that. So the first section we're going to jump into is preparation. And we're going to start out with Guru Anton on this. So, Guru Anton.
Hi, Dean. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for inviting me on here. It's fantastic. It's a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to enjoying the discussion tonight. So we're jumping in on preparation. So over the years, while I've been teaching self-defense and blade self-defense, one of the biggest things I've noticed, and maybe you guys have noticed the same thing, is the total unpreparedness of most people to deal with violence in any shape or form. You know, it's kind of like we all prepare ourselves, or mostly we prepare ourselves for having a fire in our house. You know, we know our evacuation process, we know where we're going to evacuate to, we put fire alarms in, smoke alarms, all sorts of things get put in place to prevent us getting into a bad situation in a fire. But when it comes to violence, most people stick their head in the sand and don't want to know anything about it and assume it's not going to happen. And statistically, it probably isn't going to happen to you, but statistically also it happens to somebody all the time, and that somebody could always be you, yet people are completely unprepared for it. All the courses I've done, when I talk about this kind of subject, they're just like, ooh, well, I don't really want to, you know, I don't know what to do about that. I don't have any idea of how I should deal with it. So, you know, I don't know if you guys have experienced the same thing in your dealings with people when it comes to self-defense. How about you, Tom? Because you know, you're on board with us. Same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same. Everybody you try to like, every time for example, I market the SACA, the Surviving a Knife Attack program that we normally run. People will go, why do I need to learn that? I don't get attacked. And if the police says that most of the knife crimes are basically between gangs, I'm not a gang member, that won't happen to me. So that's always the case. And sometimes you get that gray area of, I don't want to be in trouble with the law. That's the other answer that we normally get, because people seem to think here that if they learn self-defense, basically they could get in trouble with the law if they use it in an actual confrontation. So there are quite a lot of misnomers, or basically misconceptions, about what self-defense really is all about.
How about you, Laurie? How have you found it?
Well, it's actually twice as bad because
really,
not only don't want to think about it, it'll never happen to us. But if something happens, a man will protect me. My husband will, you know, because we're not supposed to be the strong ones. We're not supposed to be the ones to, you know, take care of the confrontation. We're supposed to be, nope, it's not, you know, someone else will take care of it. And that's usually kind of questions that I'm asking people, like, what happens when you're by yourself?
Yeah.
What happens if you're out with a group of women? Who's protecting you? You know, you're not with that protector. So you have to have a plan B. If that's your plan A, you need a plan B.
You need a plan B.
Your plan A, right?
Yeah, it's terrible because a lot of people don't take responsibility for what could happen to them. They kind of palm it off to somebody else. So, you'll look after me if anything happens.
Yeah.
But the reality is that most of the time, if you're going to be attacked, unless it's going to be in a social setting where you're in a bar or something, but if you're going to be attacked, you're going to be on your own. So you've got to take some kind of responsibility. Yeah, you have to, and that all comes from awareness and knowledge. You've got to understand where the threat is, what the threat is.
Yes, exactly.
Without getting paranoia about it. And I think that's something that scares people as well. If they start to delve into the aspect of violence, that it kind of drags them into a spiral of nastiness that they don't really want to face.
Yeah.
Because it's a scary subject. And, violence doesn't have a kind of top limit or a bottom limit. It's kind of like a black pool where people don't know what the depth of that is.
Yeah.
So they don't want to jump in it, and they don't want to put their toe in it because they don't know where it's going to take them.
Yeah.
And, and I think for us as martial arts instructors or self-defense instructors, our job, the hardest job I ever have, really, is not in teaching the physical skills, but just in getting people to recognize that you've got to understand that violence happens all around us all the time.
Yeah.
And the chances of it spilling over into your life are very real.
Yes.
And you've only got to take the knife situation that we had in London a few years ago. That affected a lot of people in a crowded place. And some people had the understanding of what to do and how to deal with it. But a lot of people didn't. And I think for most people, it is a very scary subject. And I can understand that. It is a scary subject. But you things that scare you, to my mind, you should find out as much as you can about, so that they don't scare you in a bad way. It allows you to make the choice. You can start making choices. You can be scared, or you can learn about it and put things in place to mitigate bad things happening around you. But sadly, most people don't do that.
Just within the section 1 that we were tentatively talking about, Anton, what about potential attacker, being cognizant of your area, victim selection, body language, victim opportunity, and all that stuff?
Yeah, they're crucial. I mean, they're the first parts that you need to really look into. We go about our lives every day walking into so many different environments throughout the day. And we meet all sorts of people, and 99.9% of the time, they're perfectly fine. Everything's okay. And I think for that reason, that's part of the reason why people switch off to potential bad situations. They don't recognize who could be an attacker. They don't recognize they put themselves into a vulnerable position because 99.9% of the time you're not in that position. So it's kind of hard to understand that the guy across the street could be just an innocuous guy walking past, or he could be somebody that's eyeing you up to attack you. And that's I understand that is a hard thing for people to deal with and to understand, because people don't want to go around living their life in fear. You look at the way that this whole pandemic thing has kind of escalated people's fear hugely, and you can see the negative effects that that's had. So imagine if you take that into the realm of violence around you, nobody's going to go out of the house. Violence lockdown. Which would be stupid, really. But I think you've got to start from yourself, and you've got to, there are a lot of good interviews online and in literature or in books from offenders of violence who explain quite well who they're looking for, what triggers them to look for certain types of people, certain situations. You have. that's all part of your learning process, is to go and look at these things, find out what an attacker is actually looking for, so that you don't become that thing. So it's things like your body language, how you walk down the street, how you look at other people when you're walking down the street. You haven't got your earphones in, so you can't hear anything that's going on around you, especially at night and when you're in, an alone situation. The number of people I see here in Plymouth who walk out in front of traffic lights because they're just completely unaware of where they actually are. And they go to cross the road, and the cars are beeping like crazy.
That's insane.
Pulling up to, and the weird thing is the pedestrian thinks that the person in the car is in the wrong. But nowadays people kind of don't want to engage with the world around them as much as they used to. Everybody puts things in their ears, puts sunglasses on their eyes, puts a hoodie up, and they've got their head down. And they just have their own little tunnel vision of what life's about. And, you've really got to find ways of changing that without it infringing on your everyday life. And that takes training. That takes a little bit of understanding. And, going back to what I said before, a lot of people don't want to do that because it scares them. I'd rather be in my own fixed little world,
and pretend it's not there.
And pretend it's not there. So you've got to learn about who a potential attacker might be, and it can be anybody, because as we know, yes, Laurie.
I was going to say, can I chime in when you're done?
No, absolutely, go.
I was just going to say, for you guys, you have to train yourself to think this way because it's not normal. For us ladies, we've been trained this kind of stuff. Even if we're not doing martial arts, women are exposed to this kind of like safe behavior right from the beginning, since we're, going a buddy system, don't be by yourself in a unfamiliar area. Don't be distracted. Don't have headphones in. Don't look at your phone. Don't get in your car and start texting on your phone and not paying attention. Your car is unlocked, somebody get right in with you and then you're trapped. So, I mean, for you, it's like we need to train ourselves. Now, women have been trained to do all these things, but we don't train any of the other stuff. You know what I mean? We're few and far between where it's like we take our safety.
How do you get inherently trained in that? Is it just passed on between female groups or?
Yeah, a lot of it is school. For me, there was college. When I went to Eastern, there was a lot of free programs that women could go to about safe behavior. So I was one of the ones putting on those, trying to talk to people about safe behavior, or like what things are at your disposal. Can you call security to walk you to your car when you're done with your late classes, instead of you walking by yourself in this huge parking lot? There's things available to women that they're just not,
taking advantage of the resources. Okay.
Resources, especially like younger women in college, but still, like you were saying, people are still distracted. They're not paying attention. And if you're not aware of your surroundings, there could be someone, there could be that sheep going right by and you just got selected.
Yeah,
exactly.
If that is like, eyes up, making sure you're looking people in the face. Hi, how are you? Being assertive.
Always be alert.
Well-lit area. This is all stuff that's like basic women's self-defense classes that we all get taught when, hopefully people are going to these. That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
and then out of sight, out of mind. So it's like sometimes you reminder, like, don't be on your cell phone. Pay attention.
What do you think, Tom?
I mean, one thing that I think is basic, whether it is going to be like a mugging, an assault in the street, or a confrontation, you always have three factors in self-defense. You've got basically the attacker. Now, wherever we go, whether it is going to be in a bar, whether it is going to be on the street, there's always going to be a potential predator. And this is one thing that we always have to remember. And what the predator is always looking at is the opportunity. So what are the opportunities? It could be money, it could be cars, okay, it could be a home invasion, or it could be like for some of the ladies, basically taking advantage of the ladies in the bar, okay, or basically you're being picked up because your body language somehow tells them that you're an easy target.
Mhm.
So even in a bar, then even like confrontations could start from somebody was thinking across the room, I can pick on that guy. They can bet on it. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's the opportunity. And of course, you as the victim. So
Oh,
now,
no,
sorry.
go. Carry on.
Yeah.
I'll
So,
jump in a second.
yeah. So basically, you've got your predator, you've got the opportunity, and you as the victim. Now, if you lessen if you don't give them basically, if you don't become aware of your situation, if you don't, as you, Laurie and Anton was saying earlier on, if you're not aware, okay, if you try to live in your, if you try to live and move outside in your own bubble, then you basically increase the opportunity of you being attacked. Okay, if you look shy, if you look embarrassed, if you look depressed on the street while waiting the bus or while waiting the coach or waiting the taxi, you can be basically picked. If you walk around the streets and basically look like a tourist, you can be like a target as well. So I mean, and body language really will tell people
Wow,
if
yeah.
basically if you are at the present moment, at that present time. So if you're basically always like this while waiting for the bus, looking down and rocking back and forth, then people will think, okay, this is the person to be targeted. So if you basically lessen the opportunity, present yourself as like Laurie and Anton was saying earlier on, look smart, be alert. Okay, look at your surrounding, know your surrounding. You basically lessen the opportunity that you're giving the predators to attack you. And of course, you as the target, be less of a target. Okay, so try to mingle, try to be a gray man in the crowd. Don't basically put yourself in a position that you're always stand out both in a good and a bad way, that you becoming a target. Because remember, it's being a target is not always about being assaulted on the street. As I've said earlier on, being picked on inside a bar, in the bar, because you're the smallest person in the room, or basically you're exhibiting this type of behavior, you can be an easy picking. So those three things that are very important that I think people would have to remember. And this would apply to almost like any situation. So whether you're outside in the street, you're inside your own place, inside basically your office, or in your own car.
Anton, you want to finish up?
Yeah, I was going to say that you also have once a predator has chosen a target for all the reasons that we stated, you then have the possibility of victim interview, where they may come up to you and start just generally talking to you, finding out a little bit about you, how you respond to certain things. So it's also important to understand how people socially interact with you. I mean, do I know this person? What's this person asking me? Do I need to actually answer them when they're asking me these questions? How can I remove myself from this situation? Because I think also a lot of people, and this is something I've noticed again over the years, that a lot of people get themselves into a bad situation because they don't think the bad situation is actually going to happen to them.
Yeah.
So they get, and predators are very clever at how they manipulate their potential victim, and it's really important to understand. If you do not know somebody, you have no obligation whatsoever to talk to them.
Yeah.
When you're out, you have the perfect right to say, "Look, I'm really busy. I don't have the time to talk to you right now. Thank you very much," and walk away. But people have, because we're social creatures, and again, predators know this, and they'll have, a lot of the time they will have rehearsed their methods of applying their trade as much as we as martial artists try to work our skills. So, it's a two-way thing, isn't it? They're well practiced in what they do, generally.
Wow.
So, they've got their modus operandi.
Yeah, they've got their modus operandi, and they know what works for them. And they're already, the predator is already 2 or 3 steps ahead of the victim all the time.
Yeah,
they've already got the adrenaline going through their system. And this is why things hit us hard when they do go wrong, because we're having to play catch up real quick when a situation does go bad.
Yes.
Whereas they're halfway down the runway already with what they're doing. So it is a difficult situation. But yeah, victim selection is all based on how you look, how you act, how you behave, how you speak. I have 2 areas of awareness. It's about situational awareness and environmental awareness. So what environment am I in? Are there potential threats within this environment? And what situation am I in that could escalate that threat?
Interesting.
So they're kind of 2 areas that have to be looked at when you talk about awareness.
Yeah.
Because they all have a part to play in how far down you can get taken down the road to becoming a victim.
So just to recap before we go to section 2, I think you're totally right. It's like, I think we feel obligated when somebody comes up to us that we have to be engaged with them. But what people don't understand is at that time, they're occupying your space and they're occupying mental inventory. Because now they get you in this loop of answering, and then before you know it, it's game on with them. Where it's like, where like I tell my students, you immediately back up, hands up, fence up. Hey, like, what do you need? You need $1 or something? Like, I mean, like where you're showing that immediate assertiveness and all that, and that can change the parameter very quickly, as opposed to getting that loop of like, it's 10-7. Broadway, it's you start getting in this loop, man, and before you know it, it's
But even when you basically when you talk to somebody, or for example, somebody asks you, the way you reply to them, it has to be assertive, not aggressive, and then walk away.
Right. Yeah, because they're going to see you.
It's always like having a plan. Like what Anton said was saying earlier on. Basically, you need to have that awareness in your surrounding. Like normally when you walk to a bar, you need to know where are basically the possible exits, where are the toilets, where the chairs are, where the bar stool is. Are the chairs something that you can lift, or something that somebody can use potentially as a weapon? So you try to assess those, and you position yourself in a place where if something happens, you can just basically like bolt off, go to the nearest exit, okay, or where to go, where basically to hide if you need to hide. So there are a lot of things that you have to consider as well. So it takes part of the planning, but it's a good exercise because you need to be able to assess.
Yeah, you got to practice it like anything else.
Of course, when you go anywhere, you should be scanning what's around you, what's going on, and not just be, narrow focused with everything.
Yeah.
Section 2, proactive behavior not to be selected. Tom, and then we'll follow up with Laurie. So Tom, proactive behavior not to be selected as a victim.
Okay. Proactive behavior means that, like we were already saying earlier on, or mentioned in the first section, that for example, when you walk outside, always be alert, aware of what is happening, okay, of your surrounding, and also having a plan. That is having a proactive behavior. So, like for example, you go into like some sort of a play. So, like if you're walking basically on a dark alley, like if you're about to get to a corner, are you going to just go straight and meet that corner head on? I don't think so. You might as well go to the opposite side when you see that something is clear. So that is a proactive behavior. Or when you walk in the street, instead of walking on the side where the traffic is coming from behind you, walk on the other side where the traffic is going towards you, so nobody can just basically pick you up from behind. So that is proactive behavior. And like I've said, if you enter a room, know the nearest exits. Okay, who to talk to. Like in the for example, like in the UK, we do have like signals that they can say, or safe words that they can say to the bartender, or signals that they can say to anybody. I don't know if it's the same in the US. So that, for example, ladies who feel that they are vulnerable, they can actually talk to somebody and tell them somebody is hitting on me, or somebody is okay. So they can do that without arousing the suspicion of the person. So those are the things that they have to know. It's simply like planning also ahead. That is a proactive behavior. Planning ahead of time, like from the time that you leave your house, going to the place where you're going and coming back. So what are the things that you need to do? Okay, so like if you take a cab, make sure that you get to know the name of the cab driver, or phone somebody or text somebody that I am in this cab with this driver with this number. Okay, so when you go missing, somebody basically can immediately alert the authorities. So it's a matter really of planning ahead as well. So that is a proactive behavior. And yeah, knowing how to respond to somebody when basically they come to you and try to create confusion on your end by asking you a question while some of their friends are going behind you. So making sure that you have all those covered.
Laurie, what would you like to add?
All of that is awesome, by the way. That's all, like awareness is so important for any kind of avoiding victim selection. I just want to add two little points. Know the tools available to you. So for example, if you're in a cab, I'm just kind of piggyback on that, Tom. There's a YouTube video that you can play on your phone that's a pretend dad, and he asks, so you're not really on the phone with anybody, but it's like, hey honey, how are
that's good. That's good to know.
Are you on your way? Yeah. And then he'll pause and you can answer, yeah, dad will be there in about 10 minutes. You know what I mean? So if you don't have anybody to call, there's still out there, so that way you can pretend and you're creating this safe environment. So the cab driver thinks, okay, they're on the phone with somebody.
Do you have the
can
link
share
for that?
your location.
That's actually better.
Rather
than pretending.
Yeah, Laurie, can you post a link to that maybe later?
Yeah, I'll find it and post it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that's really neat. People might enjoy benefit from that. That's fun.
It's just ask simple questions like, where are you going? What time are you going to be here? And it just sounds like it's a real conversation. So
that's brilliant.
And you can't call anybody.
It's still
things on your phone where you can share a location. I have an iPhone. You can do that. So if I have to travel sometimes by myself for work. So same thing. I can say, I'm at this location, and my mom can be on her phone and be like, okay, she's on her way to the airport. She can see when I arrive at the airport. You know what I mean? Have to turn it off to go on the airplane. So use your tools. Technology is awesome. Every day is creating and thinking of these things that we're thinking of, and create something for it to help keep people safe. So there's the tools, but what if you forgot your cell phone, blah, blah, blah. I always like to look for makeshift weapons, because that's how I think. So again, like hairpins, knitting needles, metal pens. I mean, what can you wear with you? What can you have on your person? Just if you're spinning a pen in your hand, you look harmless, but this could be, stab to the eye, and now you're no longer a threat to me. Right? So makeshift weapons are great. Umbrellas, high heels. I could strangle you with my purse. I could think of all sorts of nefarious things I could do with scarves. I mean, that's my point, is there's if you think about what you expect for us women, we wear tighter clothes, we have no pockets. It's harder to conceal things. Ryan's hairpin is so awesome because it's right there. I don't have to dig in my purse to find anything.
Yeah.
So if I'm ever in a situation, I have it. Now, again, I'm going to practice with it because we're going to stress test it, right?
Yes, you have to.
Be second nature, right? So
Right.
if I'm in a confrontation, I want my hands to go up, right? Instead of out.
Yeah, it's set down, right.
So that way I can get to my weapon. But same thing, you want to practice. Stress test everything.
That's very important.
The what if game. What if this happens? What if this happens?
Yes.
And I'm going to talk about more, but all of that is so important.
Yeah.
Weapons.
Anton, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, just on proactive behavior, I think that going back to the awareness thing, really, because as Thomas said on his post that he put up over the last week, awareness is the key to all of this, really. It's the base level of everything. And, so, to me, one of the best things anybody could ever learn are things like the Cooper's color codes. It's a very old system, but it really puts you in a good place to start thinking about the environment and the situation you're in and how you can kind of place yourself on that traffic light system, if you like, of at what threat level you are at. And that's also being very proactive about the situation and the environment you're in at the time. So rather than going around in a completely white blank awareness state, you're actually moving yourself. You're moving yourself through those levels as you progress through your journey of your day. And it doesn't. I mean, I do it automatically all the time, and I think this is the big thing that people think you've got to be proactive. Doesn't mean you've got to be actively doing it. If you start on this process, eventually it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
So that when you walk about your environment, you're aware of everything around you, but you're still able to engage on a minute level as well. So you can be having a conversation one-on-one with another person, but at the same time be aware of everything else that's around you.
Use your peripheral vision.
Using peripheral vision, all of these sort of things. And it doesn't take a lot of training to do that. That's the big thing about it. People think this can take years to get, but it really doesn't. If you go on a good course that's well structured for it, the tools and the techniques that are there to help people develop those skills fairly quickly are all there. But I think too many people think about the physical side of self-defense. Whereas if you've got that awareness level about you, and as you say, it all comes down to awareness, there should never be a point where you need to resort to the physical.
Yes.
Especially for most people, like I say, the chances of it happening to you are very minuscule. But if they do, you want to be in a good place.
Yeah. I mean, if you get a good awareness, you'll be able to avoid the situation from escalating. And that's it. That's a win-win. Fighting without fighting.
Yeah,
that's the one.
You less of a target just from practicing these things. So like the practice puts it into play where you're less of a sheep.
Here's a question for you all. Where it doesn't get into the realm of hyper-vigilance. In other words, I guess the compare and contrast would be, okay, I'm in familiar settings. At what point, I've had like talks with people in the past, like, when does it exceed like where you're being too hyper about it? And, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong in that. I mean, what do you guys think on that? As far as familiar settings and compared to like obviously unfamiliar. So within the context of familiar settings, can you potentially be over hyper as far as that goes? What do you guys think?
Good question.
I think it's potentially possible, but I think if you're in an environment that well, then you shouldn't necessarily be, because if you know the place well, you're going to notice things that are out of place within that situation, and you can respond to those. I think the danger comes mostly if you're in an environment you don't know. Then you do have to escalate your awareness levels. I mean, twitching and being nervous about this
No,
around is probably a little bit
during
high.
the wall market,
That'll make you look more like a victim than anything else, really, I think. But that is exactly why people need to train this sort of thing. Like everybody trains how to punch and kick and all of this sort of stuff, but nobody actually trains to walk around a place, look at a place. Just how am I going to get myself from where I'm sat now out of that door if I really need to quickly? How am I going to do it? All of these things you have to think. You should think about. I say you have to think about. It's something you should think about. Hyper vigilant. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's going to boil down more on the arousal level that you get when you go to a place. I'm going to give myself as an example. Growing up in Tondo in Manila, because I know how rough it is there, so I'm always, I would say, vigilant. I'm always aware of my space. Okay, I'm always aware when somebody's trying to get around me. I'm always aware of practically everything. Coming over here to the UK, relatively safe, so I tended to mellow down a little bit, because I mean, especially here in my area, having like problems with knife situations and knife attacks or mugging is very rare. But the moment I go to the Philippines again to visit, my arousal level goes up. Okay, so I'm back to my old self. Okay, but it's something that you can really practice, because where you are gives you a kind of stimulus, and this particular stimulus basically allows basically sends that message to your body and gives your arousal level to go that high, to become aware, to become more cautious, to become more alert. Okay, but it only goes for a moment. Once you're almost like back to your, like for me, back to my old self, okay, of my vigilance, my alertness, I settle back in. So it's a kind of play between the level of your arousal and your anxiety. So because of the stimulus that the situation is basically giving you.
It's environment and situation again.
Yeah. So like, for example, if I go on if I walk on a place wherein it's not familiar to me, then yes, my arousal level shoots up. Okay, but at that point, because for example, have been doing it I mean, as I grew up, it's easier for me to settle myself, to lower down that level of anxiety that I'm feeling. Because I mean, when you basically walk into those places, you don't know what's gonna happen. You don't want to be in a situation. You don't want to be in a fight. You don't want to be in a life changing situation. But you know that if something happens, you have to step it up. Okay, so there. And like, if I go if I went to a club or a bar back then, and especially if I know that like a fraternity or a group is celebrating a occasion in that bar, my level of alertness goes up. Because why? They're basically, they belong to a fraternity. If something happens, fight will always be there.
Yeah, that's gonna be multiple man.
And I mean, maybe just like in football here in the Philippines, like watching basketball, a lot of times fans basically end up fighting outside. So even if you're not a diehard fan of a particular team, once you're about to go out of the stadium or the place, you have to be vigilant. You have to be alert, because anything can just start. So yeah, but for me, it's not the hyper vigilance thing. It's more of like an arousal level that your body basically feels during that particular moment. But if you know how to control it, it will be easier for you to tone it down.
I think so. I think it's based on who you are. Laurie, what do you got?
I have the same level of hypervigilance no matter where I go. Because just because it was safe the last time you were there doesn't mean it's gonna be safe.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a right or wrong to this. Yeah.
I think like going into it, a lot of times I'll do the same assessment I always do, and then the level might come down. I think for me, I try not to make other people uncomfortable with it. And so I just keep it in my head. So I think that's where, like, if you're too hyper about it, you could probably stay away, because they're like, oh, this lady's crazy. She's always looking for, where's that shooter coming from? But it just depends on your experience. I've been through some really interesting crisis training through my job, where we got to talk to there's these two speakers that came in, and one was the ex-military guy and the other one was a psychologist, and they do like major crises in the United States, so like 9/11, postal shootings, mall shootings, stuff like that. So they have been to basically every major crisis since the 80s, right? So these people are telling us about what to do, how would you manage that type of crisis situation, either flight, if you can get away, if you have to fight, what's your plan, and can you barricade the door, what are you using for a weapon? But just their point of view was so scary, because they were like, anybody can have a bad day, anybody could, and you don't know what's going on. They can snap just like that, and it's you go to the postal service and it's the guy behind the counter that you so you still got to have that level of awareness, even though it's someplace that you're comfortable with. You still have to go in and be aware.
Yeah. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It was just something that was brought up to me, and I think it's individual based. You know what I mean? Like, where's your previous practice? So I don't.
Okay, go into a building, you need to look for a shooter, or you need to not gonna
that's basically where experience comes in.
Right.
But the more experienced you are, the easier for you to manage your anxiety level.
I think that's gonna be a big part of it. All right, if you guys are all set, we're gonna do section 3. Dependent.
Oh yes.
Laurie. Husbands, kids, outlaws, in-laws.
Everybody who you're out with, neighbor, girlfriends, you're out at the bar together and something happens. So how do we deal with that? And now it's different when it's casual, right? But like my family, my husband and I already have talked about, like, what happens if we get into an altercation, right? I have, do we talk to our kids? At what age do we talk to our kids? We do all this work to prepare ourselves, but we're not always by ourselves. So I think the hard part is to have that conversation. And kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. They do fire drills at school. Now they do active drills at school.
Active shooting,
Yeah. That my daughter talks about, oh yeah, we had a drill where we had to like go in the closet and be quiet and close all. And she had like a saying for it. I forget what it was. It was like crouch and be quiet. And I don't know, they make up some kid saying, but I'm just like, wow, what days we live in, right? But if we can have a conversation with them. Hey, if mommy has to fight, this is what you need to do. Like, are we at home? Do you need to go hide? Do you have access to a phone? Are they old enough to use a phone? One of mine isn't. Right? So who's in charge? Or if we're out in public, where do you go? Who do you look for help from? If there's no authority figure there, because usually when I'm fighting, it's before the police are going to be there, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing it. So there's no police, who do they look for? A mom with kids is probably what I would tell them. Find a mom with kids, So kids, what do? Do you lock yourself in your car? It's going to be different for everybody. So there isn't, an answer, but there still needs to be that conversation. There still needs to be that forethought. What happens if we get into a fight and we're together? And pressure testing it in martial arts and training, because I might want to practice what it's like to have a friend with me. You know what I mean? Against multiple attackers. something like that, where how would I move? How would I keep myself in between people, to keep them out of the way? How would I draw attention to myself? So there's all things to think about when you're with a dependent. How do I control this situation? So, and you got to practice that. And, and even
100% on that. Like, it's funny, in my group class before, unfortunately, before COVID kicked in, I would do exercises just like that. Okay, you're in a parking garage. Okay, you're approaching a car, you're getting approached, you have your kids with you. So what do you think you guys would do? And just, and the people I'm referencing, my students, had dependents. And it was amazing, like, not even an inclination of like a thought or like that they did any planning. So it's not, I don't think it's a household item. You know what I mean? I don't think so.
The funny thing is, though, if you ask them what they would do if there was a fire in the house, they probably got a plan for that.
Yeah.
So they train for, like I say earlier, they train for that sort of thing.
They're all
not for this sort of thing.
Deer in the headlights is what I got. Deer in the headlights. Anton, anything you want to jump in on the dependents?
There's some really cool. I mean, there are some really good physical techniques in how you can maneuver your partner or your child out of harm's way, depending on where they're stood. A lot of things like Filipino arm drags and all these sort of things that will shuck them over that way. And they're kind of useful things to know, so that you can, as you were saying earlier, Laurie, about how can you become the barrier between a potential threat and your child or your loved one. So there are a lot of things that you have to take into consideration, like again, it comes down to the environment that you're in at the time, and how you're going to manipulate or maneuver your partner so that you become the barrier rather than they're in the way, sort of thing. So there's a lot to think about in that kind of area. But I think it is, like you say, having that conversation with them initially. Okay, if this happens, what's your role in all of this? The last thing I need is for you to be freaking out because mum is getting in a confrontation with somebody. It's again, they need to have a proactive role in what's actually going to take place if this sort of thing happens. And it's a very grown up conversation that you have to have with them about that, unfortunately.
No, agreed.
It is.
When it's not obviously pleasant, but
I mean, sometimes
it's that proactive stance again, isn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes teaching your kids how to assess, for example, an area where they go into, it's one of the things that a first step into helping them to become aware of basically certain things in the environment. So like when you enter a room, so you have to stop, you have to look, you have to assess basically what are the potential mobile barriers that you can use or weapons of opportunity that you can use. Okay, so those are the things that you have to become aware of. And like, for example, if you are the one who's the responsible adult, how you position yourself again is very important. So one of the things that, like, for example, when I was in uni, my close friends, they are hard drinkers. So every time that we go out, they get really pissed. So to the point wherein I have to designate myself as the driver, so I can get away from drinking too much alcohol. But at the same time, I am the lookout. I am the driver. I am the PA if they need to, and I'm the one who's basically looking over the shoulder. So whenever we go to a bar, I choose the place. So when I enter, okay, this is where we're going to be. Okay, this is where we're going to be. We're gonna be far away from that from that crowd. So, and if it is like too tight, then we have to go somewhere else, because there were already a few times that they nearly get into a fight. So I was like, my heart was pounding. So luckily, we managed to de-escalate the situation. But yeah, there were like few few close calls on that one. And when we go on, like with my family, when we go on, when we go to other places, like we go to like Italy or France, we normally have a like an operating procedure. So if at one point something happens, we are going to rendezvous on the last place that we stop. So something like that. So maybe like a McDonald's or something. So that's one of the plans that's one of the plans that we do. And then I like when my eldest son is already old enough to take some responsibilities, I gave him some of the responsibilities. So, okay, if this happens, you have to make sure you secure your younger brother and your late sister, and basically we're gonna move. So we have those kinds of conversations as well, and yeah, we try to make sure that we do distribute the load of responsibility and yeah, if so for emergency situations, like he has a first aid kit as well with him. I have mine, so if something happens, at least, and we are separated, he knows what to do, I know what to do. So those type of situations. So yeah, we do talk about it, so at least we do have something we do have a plan if something goes wrong. So
Yeah,
yeah.
to me that's just critical. When you got kids, man, to me
Yeah.
that's like a thing that just needs to be
Yeah.
handled. You
Yeah.
know,
And I mean, sometimes it's not just because of violence. I mean, if you go to a theme park, and there's a lot of people in it, something might go wrong, and you get separated from each other. You need to have a plan. You need to
yeah,
have a
those are
backup.
jungles, man. Those theme
Exactly.
parks, I can't stand
Yeah.
them. I can't stand them. Man. All right, we're on section 4, pre-violent psychology. Laurie, what
There's
say you?
we can talk about with pre-violence psychology. So many things. I know, like, but I want to talk about like from a woman's point of view, because a lot of times we freeze because we don't visualize. We're not used to that kind of situation. Myself with a little more training, there's two things that go through my mind. So one, if someone's approaching me and they're at a distance, I'm using that psychology of being confident, looking them in the eye, being like, stop, you don't need to come any closer. What do you need? Or, keeping my space. But if I turn around and someone's already in my space, which would be hard, right? Because we're already practicing situational awareness. But for some reason, if I turn around and they're there, I'm going to do the opposite. So a lot of times guys will use intimidation, right? To either engage or disengage. Like if I'm bad enough, then maybe they'll leave me alone, right? I'll do the opposite. I'm just a little girl. I don't want any, I don't know. I don't want any trouble. I'm harmless, da da da. And that way I can kind of have the advantage. So in my mind, the psychology of pre-violence is assessing the situation and figuring out what's going to give me the biggest advantage. Okay. Is it playing stupid? Is it being aggressive? Usually for me, it's not, because everybody, that I am going to be encountering is usually bigger than me, stronger than me, or there's more than one of them, right? Because we get in fights for different reasons than you guys.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm trying to assess. And one thing that I've been working on with my teacher is assessing like the height and the distance and how to use that to my advantage. How I use combat geometry in order to be able to strike and not get hit back, to my advantage. So that's a whole lifetime of figuring that out. But the psychology of what can I use to my advantage, so I can win, because I want to win and I want to win fast. I want to get in and out, so what's going to advantage? Do I disguise my skills? Do you pretend to go crazy? I had a friend of mine that was in a bar and someone was trying to pick a fight with him. He picked up a fork and he stabbed himself in the arm, and they left him alone because he was crazy, right? if this crazy guy is going to stab himself with something,
Yeah. What's he gonna do to us?
I remember years ago doing a Jeff Thompson seminar. You know Jeff Thompson?
No, I don't. No.
Yeah.
Okay, he's known. He's very famous over here. He's kind of one of the first people to bring reality into combat. He was a doorman in the UK on some bad doors around the Coventry area. But I was on one of his seminars many years ago, and one of the things that he said when he used to sometimes get into fight situations, he had different strategies for different situations. So sometimes he would be incredibly aggressive towards a person verbally. Sometimes he would go passive. And he said some of the best things that worked for him when he just used to act completely loopy. So he'd start jumping around, hopping about the place, being an absolute craze guy, and it'd be like, "Whoa, I'm not going anywhere near that."
There's something to that, huh?
So,
like, what do you use to your advantage?
Exactly. It's kind of having those things that you can pull out your bag when you need to, and just acting a certain role that's going to get you into a better situation.
Right, and being able to read that situation to be able to see when those opportunities come up, either act or to run, So that's all stuff again that we talk about pressure testing. My psychology part for you.
Yeah.
So true though, because if somebody's coming up to you, I mean, I firmly believe, man, you get your distance fences up and all that, but if you do that and you're making fists, man, you could just escalate that like right off. Now they need to show face if they got people around them. Sometimes it's kind of best, man, where you're like Laurie was saying, like, hey, what's going on? You know what I mean? As opposed, you just escalated it to like
Right.
So that's not the smartest play for what's going on,
Yeah.
But even if you escalate from that point, they're not expecting you that you can. You know what I mean? Because
that's what I mean, right? Because you want to hear, then all of a sudden you want, in your case.
Chances are they a grappler? Are they a boxer? How are they standing off to me? I can understand how I have to fight.
Yeah.
Grappler, I don't want you anywhere near me.
No, I know. Like they're getting a crouch position, ready for a double leg takedown.
Right, but then we're doing all fights, right? Box, their hands go for their legs, stuff like that. So it's like being able to understand what's in front of you.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. Good stuff. We are on. I'm gonna make. I know we got 5 sections. I'm throwing a 6th section because I want Anton to cover just stress inoculation on its own. Anton, is that all right with you, Anton?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, section 5. Tom, this is you. Ambush versus social violence.
Okay. All right. Social versus asocial violence. Okay. This basically dictates how you're going to respond to a particular situation. So what is social violence? So social violence is basically situations where it stems from like confrontation. Okay, so you got antisocial behaviors that basically, so you're in the bar, you looked at you looked at somebody straight in the eye, they didn't like it, they went straight to you, you had a conversation or more of an argument, and then from the argument it went into physical confrontation or a fight. So that is social. Or you got pissed off with somebody, you shot it at somebody, and then it ended up into a confrontation, a physical confrontation. So that is social. Asocial is basically situations where you've got assault, mugging, sexual abuse, so all those sorts, where basically you're confronted with somebody who's basically really like a criminal predator. So that is asocial. Okay, so let's put a distinction on those, because the situation will dictate how you should be responding to violence. Like social, if it is a confrontation, if it stems from an argument, it is something that you can avoid. Okay, so it's easier for you to avoid it. If you are being ambushed, then the level of violence is already up there.
Yeah.
Social, it goes up.
Yeah,
okay?
Right.
If you're being ambushed, especially if the person is already beside you or the person is in front of you, the level of violence is already there. The threat is much higher than a confrontation that basically in a bar situation.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something that we have to bear in mind, because even even the way we respond to this from the physical end of self-defense, okay, this will also dictate this will give the context of how you respond to the situation. Okay, because if, for example, this is a confrontation, and instead of avoiding it, instead of finding a way to be able to get out of the situation, you stay there. Okay, and if something happens, what are the chances of you managing to tell the police it was a self-defense situation? I mean, you contributed to it.
Your country, man. It sounds like you guys got to really justify what you guys are doing.
Yeah, but it's different from where you're being ambushed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's thank God.
You have even if things becomes serious, even the way you act, and especially if it is home invasion, you can defend yourself. Okay, you can use more force, but again, the force that you should be using has to be legal and proportional. I mean, I think in every country that's how it goes. Okay, the level of proportionality and legality only depends, or it's relative. But I think that's something that is
there's definitely did you exceed what was needed at the time?
Yeah.
Did you go excessive force?
Yeah, or you went all Bruce Lee on the person, even though the person is already down.
Different.
Or you went Master Ken on the person, re-stomp the groin when the person is already down. So
that all applies in Texas, man.
So okay, so I mean, having basically established that, okay, this basically has an impact now on the way you respond to things. So why do I say that? Now, it basically has an impact on our fight or flight response and the way we manage a violent situation. So like, if you basically are in a social violent situation, you do the monkey dance, as we call it. Things escalate. Okay? Until basically you've got that level of arousal that you might not be able to manage anymore. And it goes to a fight. Okay? There's an escalation. Now, if you are in an ambush situation or a social situation, okay, the amount of stress is already up there. So the arousal level that you should get to be able to respond to it should also go higher. Otherwise, as you have mentioned earlier on, any predator, okay, like what Anton has already mentioned earlier on, any predator, they're already halfway down the line and you're trying to catch up with it. So if the level of violence is already there and you're catching up with it, what's the chance of you managing to survive it? So you have to keep up and you have to step up to the plate. Okay, so it goes now with how does it affect us? We've got the fight or flight response and the freeze response. Okay, so what is the fight or flight response? It is basically our basic defense mechanism when we go into a stress. What does it do? The violent situation basically registers to our amygdala, which is our primitive, our limbic system. And that unconscious, okay, that triggers an unconscious reaction to our body. And it sends basically the signal now to our body to produce the adrenaline. Okay, and this adrenaline is the one that, I can see watermelon there. Yeah, this is where Laurie is gonna give me like a. So
we're gonna see violence, all right.
So once basically this triggered your adrenaline hormone, your adrenaline hormone now starts giving now, supplying your muscles with oxygenated blood for you to be able to respond to the situation. Okay, so that is your
Laurie.
that is your basic fight or flight. Okay, now once, as I've said, once you are in a social situation, the trigger escalates. But in an asocial one, it is already there.
It's already there. Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, it is already there. So it's really important that we do have we know how to separate and put context into
each one.
Even how the way we plan and how the way we manage situation. Now you've got your fight and flight. Where does the freeze come?
Oh, somebody read Tom's book.
Okay. So the freezing comes now from your any experience, your value, your belief system. Okay, that basically sometimes causes the freezing action when you respond to danger. It depends on how you see yourself in relation to the danger, and your experiences. If, like for example, you have already experienced this before and you know you can manage well, arousal levels goes up, but you still can manage and can manage the situation. If this is something new, arousal level goes up, everything goes haywire. There's a big chance that you won't be able to cope up with the violence. Okay, and of course, so what happens when your adrenaline shoots up? Your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up, and what goes down when your heart rate goes up? Your cognitive level of impressions, everything. And that's where we start thinking now that gross motor skill is the one thing that you can really rely on. Finer motor skills, unless you train day in and day out. There's a lot of things. We go tunnel vision, we turn deaf, all those things. And that's why it's really important that we learn how to manage it. It is something that you can't get away from, but it's a matter of you learning how to manage it. So that is how important social and asocial situation or learning how to handle those things are.
Definitely. Just want to say a quick hi to people. We had a bunch of people that just jumped in. We got Brian Rodriguez. We got Scott from Alberta. Brian Zelinsky from Connecticut. What a good-looking crew. Great. That was nice of them. Chad. Meister Chad.
Looking at the wrong video.
Meister. Yeah, it's Laurie. He was really talking about. We got Chad from Miami. We got Vico, Alvin, Jeremy. Some of the usual. We got Sean we got Richard, Patrick. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Richard, Felix. Okay, and Joel. From London. Okay, we got a London guy. And all right. Okay, Anton, anything you wanted to contribute to that?
No, I mean, I agree with Tom. Social violence kind of escalates slowly, generally, because you get involved in the conversations and all that sort of thing. And as Tom said, that it's easy to get drawn into the monkey dance if you don't know how to back off a little bit. So, with social violence, you do have the opportunity to de-escalate or escalate. You have a choice, in a sense, to remove yourself. Whereas a social violence, which just bam suddenly hits you, you don't have a choice necessarily on how you respond. That's a lot down to how you trained yourself for the flight, fight, freeze kind of mechanism that goes off in the body. So I always say that with a social violence, you've kind of got to go from zero to hero real quick to deal with the situation. You've got to go through those gears. You've got to go from first to fifth
Yeah, I know, like real quick,
you know,
like yeah.
very fast, and that takes training. That's where a lot of training has to come in, because I think that is hard naturally for many people to do because we're all social animals, really. So it does take a little bit of training to understand that, and that's kind of where the stress inoculation training all comes into the whole thing, really. So yeah, it's an interesting subject.
That's gonna be my favorite part when we get into that, because I just think that is so imperative, man, for everything. If you don't deal with it in your training, how in the funk are you gonna deal with it out in the street? That just perplexes me. With the mindset that people just think it's gonna magically just appear and turn on, and you'll be able to negotiate that stress and deal with it in the time when most needed. Laurie, anything you want to add to this section?
Yeah, I just want to say yes, that does happen. And women are always like, well, I'll turn into mama bear. Yeah, right. You're gonna turn into what? Whole hair? Not gonna, or you know what I mean? Like what if your kids aren't there? Your mama bear instinct doesn't kick in. It's like you have to confront the issues to take the fear away from it, to put in the work. If you don't,
amen on the work. Yeah.
you got to. And I mean, it has to be repetitive. So it's like you have to go at it. The first time I was doing gun disarms, they do gun disarms like, okay, here you go, and then you do the gun disarm, right? And then it's not stressful at all. I did gun disarms with a Krav Maga guy, and he's like, do you know gun disarms? I'm like, well, I know a couple. And he was like, I don't think you do. And I'm like, okay, well, let me see what you have. And he pulls out this gun. He's like, and he starts cursing at me. He's like, give me all your shit. He was like getting in my face. And I was like, this is not what I'm used to. But that's what I needed, because I realized I was like, I can't do the technique when he's talking to me that way. Right. So then, but again, it's odd, because the more you stress test it with the same person, you don't see him as a threat anymore. But if someone on the street was to do it with me, then it would be a threat again. So not only do you have to stress test, but you constantly have to change your training partners to have different energies, different situations, so that you can encounter them and know what to do. Without that rotation, you just get used to the same. Like I throw my angles the same way every time, same training partner every time. And then when someone does something different, it's like, oh geez, what do I do?
Yeah.
So always being able to adapt, always being able to adjust. Tom, I wanted to talk to you. Maybe we can discuss this later too. There was an article that I read about that fight or flight and freeze, and how women a lot of time will freeze. And it's something that happens with how we evolved in like
Yes.
and like how we freeze, so that way two things happen. One, we detach from ourselves. So if something's being done to us, it's like you're somewhere else, so you can survive it.
Yeah.
Psychological, specifically about like rape and like sexual abuse and that kind of thing, where people just they check out.
Yeah.
But that happen in fights too. And it's almost like if I don't move, the T-Rex can't see me. So I don't know. It's just really interesting to me, and I don't know if experience will solve that or not.
Okay. When I used to work with athletes and martial artists, because we use a lot of what we call now as mindfulness meditations or techniques for athletes. Before we uh, we put athletes to different types of meditation technique to help them with their stress, with their anxiety, and the way they respond to situation. And yeah, even like, for example, even athletes, when they play, they do experience fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, in their sport every time. And what we do is we try to basically compartmentalize the we try to find out what caused them to what caused them to freeze, what caused them to basically punch through, or what basically caused them to back out. in when they have their games, and we try to compartmentalize and find out what happened. Most of the time, it's basically it's the previous experiences that basically cause that emotional
Yeah.
uh, what's this emotional moment for them to freeze.
Yeah.
And it is something that we can get around with, especially with women who have already like who have been through like sexual abuses.
Yeah.
Um, um, when I was still teaching in the university back in the Philippines, I had a chance to work with NGOs who work with women's group who have been like who had problems from who had basically problems because of domestic abuse,
Mhm.
and I used the same technique, and it basically helped them a lot to be able to get around freezing at that moment. So yeah, we can talk about that.
Do you think like we could, because a lot of times in Penchak Silat they talk about like triggers too. So like either a
Triggers.
physical, like I hit myself somewhere, or I say a certain word to get myself my adrenaline to kick in, something like that. I think maybe would
Mm,
help get you out
yeah,
of it if you practice it. I don't know if it's
yeah, yeah.
cognitive.
There are a lot of ways to get to it.
Hmm.
Actually, yeah, you can use triggers, but also at the same time, there are informal ways of managing it. So, like we're talking about stress inoculation. I mean, yes, stress inoculation is like very important in self defense in teaching yourself. But we can also use inoculation in different ways to be able to for you to get the grip of your emotions
Hmm.
and be able to handle it more. So there are different ways of inoculating yourself. So there, it's just important, same as with self defense. It's important that we have to always bear in mind the context, okay, of basically that particular stress of the stress inoculation that we're doing or stress testing that we're doing, and it's always best to approach it in a way that it is like scenario based. So rather than just always going through
Yeah.
stress test just on the physical side, but we should be able to like put on a script. Like for example, if we're basically training them for social violence, so we need to be able to put a script from like, okay, this is the confrontation, verbal confrontations phase. Okay, they escalate here or
Mm,
escalate here. What happens next? So you get the physical confrontation, and then what happens next? So we have to go through that. Same thing as with asocial violence. So if we can do our stress test in that way, not just basically compartmentalizing, like stress testing, like uh, knife attacks, or stress testing like being held at gunpoint or being held at knife point, but you have to go through the whole thing as well. So it makes it
mm,
easier for them to understand that okay, this is like a this is not a one time uh, thing. So it is going to be like a long like it's like a storyline. So yeah, but yeah, something that we can do. Yeah.
Anton. So let's jump in. We kind of segue into it a little bit already, but stress inoculation, one of my favorite things to talk about. So what say you?
I think when you're talking about stress inoculation, you've got to go back to where it all came from, and really there are three components to it. And the first part's about education, so it's about telling people how your body reacts under stress, how adrenaline affects the system, all this fight, flight, freeze thing, how that all comes about. So that's kind of level one, the education behind stress, so that because that education informs people and gives them some sort of base to work off with everything else that they're going to be doing afterwards. So it's that thing about knowledge again. It's the same for self-defense. You've got to arm yourself with knowledge first. So understanding how that plays a part in the whole thing is important. Next is your kind of training phase, where you've got to start bringing in components that you're going to be training for, so like skill acquisition, if you like. So are you doing it against somebody pushing you, or are you going to do it against somebody trying to grab hold of your throat? Have you got it against somebody with a knife? You know, how are you going to start rehearsing what it is that you're trying to de-stress, if you like, take a person down on their stress levels? And then the third phase is the application phase, where you're actually going to apply it in as real a situation as you possibly can. And it's a very fine tool that you have to work with as you go through those, because when you start to lay on the layers of stress, if you do them too fast, it can have a completely negative consequence to the outcome. So you have to have gradual layers that you build a person through on that level of stress that you're adding to the training phase that you have. So I think, you know, for Tom and I, we both worked with Hank Hayes from NLB, No Lie Blades, and he has a very, very good process of layering levels of stress as you go through your training program. So it might be initially it might just be fatiguing the body, so that you're on the ground grappling with somebody, then you've got to perform a task. And because again, as we know from the fight, flight, freeze, and the adrenaline, all that goes through the body, the more complex the physical skill, when you're under stress, the more likely that is to fail. So this is why you go to this gross motor movement. So and you see it all the time. You see it in martial art classes where they'll teach a self-defense technique that has about 10 moving components to it, and they say this is going to work for you. And under stress, you're lucky if 3 things happen for you. So you've got to be realistic about what stress actually does to your physical capability. And it's quite shocking. It is shocking for people, because everybody goes into it thinking, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. And when it comes down to it, they're lucky if they get 1 punch in.
I know.
And that punch is aimed in the wrong place. It doesn't hit the person properly. It's completely inappropriate to the whole thing. And it's simply because they haven't gone through layers of stress training.
Right.
To be able
to separate themselves from the situation that's going on enough to be able to just think, I don't need 20 things. I need these 3 things to work for me now. Bam, bam, bam. Done.
Exactly.
That's
it. Come out. I know. Like it just perplexes me, and it's more on the defensive side what some of these teachers think their students are going to pull off, and with these, and and a lot of them, generally speaking, it's either 2 things: they're very fine motor skill oriented, or it's too much of one thing that they're expecting to do, and not even having the curse of information, what's even coming at them, no less.
And
I just think
you have like cognitive overload.
It's
not gonna work.
Laurie, go ahead.
I think that's a flaw, because as teachers, we're like, I have to teach them all these things so they stay interested. Because if we just do,
it's definitely. It's unfortunately, it's a financial marketing thing. Unfortunately.
But again,
self-defense is really quite simple. You don't need a lot for self-defense.
Right.
But that is the problem. How are you going to keep your students long enough?
That's it. No, it's like,
going?
Think about it. It's like a 4-year college program. Your first 2 years, you're taking stuff that you might not even freaking use. But the last 2 years, you kind of go into it's I get it. It's it's student retention. It's attraction. It's marketing. It's a financial aspect to it. I understand it. If you got but doesn't mean it's right, I guess. I don't know.
But it's that kind of thing. You want 1 or 2 things that are going to work for you in 99% of the cases. You don't need 99 things that are going to work for you in 1% of cases.
Less is more.
And then those couple of things that you have, you've got to layer on that stress. So as I say, it might be okay. We're going to put on audio stress, so you're going to have loud music playing while things are going on, or people shouting at you, or it's going to be visual stress. You're going to dim the lights. Now you're going to put those 2 things together. Now we're going to have somebody hitting you on the back with a paddle while you're doing it.
While you're dealing with somebody attacking with a knife or something.
Yeah, you're going to have to deal with another person trying to pull them off.
You got Laurie behind you with a pick.
Or somebody. What's going to happen when the floor's wet? How are you going to deal with this situation? But if you try and do that all at once, it's never going to work for anybody.
Yeah,
it'd be like taking somebody. It'd be like putting somebody in a car for their first driving lesson and saying, "Right, we're going on the motorway straight away."
Nope,
and you're going to drive me from London to Liverpool.
And the Autobahn.
It's going to be a disaster. So now I think one of the first groups to really do this well were when in the kind of first aid industry, when they started to realize that people just learning about first aid wasn't enough, because the minute they saw somebody with an arm hanging off, they were passing out themselves.
Ooh, so I've never dealt with that.
So now you find in a lot of first aid courses, they'll put in a stress component towards the end of it as part of your final exam for it. And that's the same sort of thing that we need to do in self-defense. Yes, Laurie.
Hey, Laurie, just hold on one second. I just want to say hi to a couple of people that just came in.
We need a peace pipe.
Mangini, hey, Jesse, hey guys, thanks for jumping in. Patrick, Chris, hey, thanks. All right, Laurie, it's all yours. Thank you.
Two things. One, stress inoculation. What I always try to do when I'm at a lesson is try to, we're working concepts, and I'll pick like one or maybe two, and then we spar at the end of class, right? And I try to get one to come out, you know what I mean? Because you're reacting, and half the time with Vico, I'm just trying not to get hit. That's where I first go. Hit. And then number two, see if I can pull off a pluma to the hand, or you know what I mean? It's just to practice that one thing in that stressful situation and then change it up the next time. So it's always something different, but it's just the one thing I'm thinking about. And then the other thing I want to talk about is I actually met one of those people that do that. So in another class I was in, there was this lady, she gave me one of her business cards. I don't remember her name. She actually is the makeup artist that would go and put everybody in the gore makeup and like have sawed off, you know what I mean? Like she would put them in to this nasty looking makeup so that the first responders could come in and actually have a visual and react to it. It was just really cool. I was like, "You do gory makeup for a living?" She's like, "Yeah." It was so awesome. I was like, "I put people in blood, guts, and gore for a living. That would be awesome." And like first responders and like crisis management, like building been blown up, or cars blown up, car bomb. I mean, like difficult situations with like terrorism and all sorts of things, and she goes and she helps these first responders get stress inoculated, so that way when they show up to their first one, they're not freezing.
Yeah, they're not where to become useless. Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Like, how can we translate?
Yeah.
And in a self-defense situation, the freeze is the worst thing you want, really.
Right.
Because you've got no options when you get the freeze. So that all comes down to stress inoculation is what stops the freeze.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Hopefully, if you do it right.
Yeah, like when we run the SACA, we do have two parts in the SACA where we teach the stop the bleed, or management of catastrophic bleeding, and the actual physical intervention. So what we do is we in the first two courses or levels, we separate them, but we basically stress test them as well. So like with the stop the bleed, we ask our participants to apply like for example a tourniquet or a direct pressure or packing on the victim using either a commercially available equipment or an improvised one. And then in level 3, we put them together. We would either start like, okay, you saw somebody injured, okay, and needs tourniquet, and while applying tourniquet, somebody attacked you from behind, because this happened to one of the terror attacks in London, where one of the victim was already helping a victim when he was attacked by the terrorist with a knife as well. So we put that into play as well, or the other way around. Okay, so basically you're defending yourself against an attacker, and you've got a loved one who was a casualty, so you have to attend to your loved one, and the possibility of again being attacked while attending to your loved one. But yeah, we put those type of like layers at the end of the on level 3, so it makes it a bit more complex, but you get to understand basically that the type of possible overload of what will happen during a scenario. So it helps you understand how you respond to it and how you can react to it. And then the debrief happens where we start talking about all those things. So what caused you to freeze? What caused you to fumble? What caused you to do this and do that? Why didn't you manage to do all those things? And then we redo it once again if we have the time to. So yeah, that's how important stress inoculation is.
And you've got to categorize the different types of stress that people get under as well. Like earlier I said about auditory stress. We have visual stress. You have a tactile stress.
Yeah.
You have emotional stress. So you have to have techniques to be able to take people through those different stages.
Yes.
So when they come out the other end, they've got a fairly good ability, all-round ability, to be able to compartmentalize those things, and still have a high performance level.
That's awesome, especially identifying those. Wow, this has been awesome. Laurie, do you have an encore for us?
No, but I wanted to just give a couple shout outs. One to Coach Vico, who's my instructor, because I got this lovely shirt from him. It says, Brian Rodriguez for this lovely hair.
Yeah.
I love that hairpin, Brian.
I mean, this thing is a lethal piece of composite, and I love it. And I'm going to wear it everywhere. And sure that my students have. And I'm going to figure out how to knit some kind of headband or something that we could put it in for women that don't have long hair. Because that's the only thing is if you don't have enough hair, you can't wear it. So we'll figure that out too.
Neat. You gotta come. Hey, Brian. Yeah, I'm definitely familiar with that. We definitely I go over that with my students. Yeah, that's great stuff. Doodle. I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything here as far as questions. Ultimately, you should be a stranger or something that knows. Yeah, all good stuff there. Wow. But so yeah, this was awesome. We'll have to. I'm almost thinking we have to do something like this again. We'll have to choose a different theme, of course, but it'd be an honor to get you three back on to do something else.
Yeah. Not sure.
So if you guys think of a different theme, I'm game. You know what I mean? So
I think we're pretty funny, the three of us too. So we can just talk about
Yeah. So
don't
Anton,
forget the watermelon.
Good looking, apparently. We're good looking.
What time?
Yes.
Don't forget the watermelon.
The watermelon. You're right.
We're gonna eat that later.
I think you guys think of another theme or something, and let's do it. Definitely.
Yeah.
There's obviously there's some great chemistry here, so I'd be honored to have you three back on.
We can do making fruit salad.
Yeah, Laurie will be doing the fruit salad on the side while we're cooking.
I'll send you some virtual fruit salad. How about that?
But any final points from anyone?
Stress test.
Ladies first.
Stress test. Stress. Whatever you do, test it.
100% test it.
Always.
There's too much stuff going on out there, and with MMA discussion, being in a group, like there's some things that I can't just go out on a tirade because I'm obviously running the group, so I have to be somewhat like objective and let everybody, but there's just some stuff I'm just like, there's just no way that's going to work under full pressure with somebody, but yes, test everything.
Until you've done it, you don't realize how diminished your skills become.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I think that scares a lot of people as well. They don't want to put themselves, martial arts instructors, they don't want to put themselves in that vulnerable position.
Yeah, for several reasons, especially when it comes to I see it mostly in knife.
Recognizing your weakness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, it's that kind of prove
That's
you need
I know I'm going to be weaker and shorter, and you know what I mean. Like I'm already at a disadvantage, so that's why my training too, keeping distance and having a long weapon, and
yeah,
how
that's
to
true.
in that distance, and using the combat geometry. That's what I have to do to survive. So
yeah, that's true.
I have to stress test it, because if I misjudge it, then I die.
Yeah, that's true.
True.
You really need to part of the awareness thing is you have to become aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, your values. Basically, your values going to dictate like your tactics, the way you work around things. They will have an impact on the way you respond to situations. So it's really important that you understand them, and you have to like get around it or work on it, your weaknesses, and double your strength. So know the way.
I read some time ago. I read a really great article by Stephen Hayes, the American Ninja.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely heard of him.
Yeah. And he, I mean, really famous guy, isn't he? Really, on the ninjutsu point of view. And he went and did the Predator course. Where they have the big helmet and all that sort of thing. And for him, as a 10th degree black belt ninjutsu, or whatever they have, 15th degrees, or whatever they have now, I don't know. But he was shocked at how ineffective his techniques were when he was put under the stress.
Wow, at least he's honest, though.
Yeah, and it was I can't remember what I read it in, but it was a really good article that he did about how it really humbled him to understand that he didn't have all the answers that he thought he had, and that from that point onwards, everything he did was based around stress testing everything.
Yeah, you just have to, man. Especially with edge, when I see with knife and all that. Like, how can you go teaching this stuff if you didn't fully test out yourself? To me, that gets on ethical and more. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's some tricky ground there, in my opinion. People's lives are potentially at stake. So.
Yeah, I do remember when I first did the NLB class in here in Stevenage, the first participants, the first group of participants that I got were predominantly martial artists. So they from Japanese martial arts to Filipino martial arts. So we normally have this pre-test where everybody wears a white shirt and we use the no live blade marking tool.
Yeah.
And basically see what happens after a 1 minute round against somebody. And you can already see like so just many lines.
Colored shirts.
Exactly. So the first thing that they say is, I thought I can handle it because I know I'm pretty sure I can do techniques and everything, but they just found out now they can't.
I know. Yeah, I know. I mean, there you go. True honesty, whether you like it or not. You know what I mean? You might not like. Here's the thing: you gotta accept it. You might not like the results, but they are what they are. You know what I mean? It's
exactly.
But guys, I gotta close out. I'm being summoned. But Laurie, would you go ahead, Laurie?
No, I was just saying with Anton's point that that the guy that was stress tested and had that awakening is because another thing that happened is he changed his apparel. And that's something that's huge for women. It's like we go up and we're wearing high heels and
right, you're bumping around.
My life in high heels. So how do I stress test that? Vico, I'm gonna wear some high heels on Saturday. We'll see how that works.
we'll see how that works out.
During sparring.
Jeez.
But I mean, that's the point. Is you gotta stress test all that stuff because
you got to create the environment as well.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
But all right, guys, I appreciate it. Hey, again, seriously, you guys wrap your heads together. Think of something else, other theme that you guys like to do together, and we'll make it happen. Definitely we'll get Anton and the rest of you two. Let's do it. Think of just throw me some ideas.
Yeah, we'll
throw me some ideas. We'll make it happen. All right. But I want to thank you guys for coming on. I appreciate it. And until next time. And Anton, I definitely want to get you on in a solo interview if that is of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
I'd love to.
Yeah, no, we have to make that happen. Yeah, I want to get more Europeans. That's why, and hopefully, yeah, me or Tom can do it, or we'll see what your schedule,
Yeah.
But definitely. All right, all. You guys take care. I appreciate it for coming on.
Bye. Thanks for having me. It's my first time.
Oh, anytime.
Thanks for having me again, Dean.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Fun.
Thank you, Anton. Thank you, Laurie.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, guys.
Take good care, guys.
Thanks,
Stay
Dean.
safe. Stay
Take
safe.
care.
Take
Bye.
care.
Yeah.
And test it.
Test it.
Justice.
Test it. All right, all. That was a good one. Yeah. So next. Who is next? Oh my gosh. Thursday. Tuhan Leslie Buck, I think is coming on, and actually I'm doing a test run with them tonight, so we'll definitely confirm that. But and this weekend there's a couple, so definitely stay tuned. They'll be all listed there on FMA discussion. All right, folks. Thank you who all watched, jumped in, and look out for Thursday. All right.